thank you so much for having us, and thank you to Shelley and the team for having me.
No.
We've known each other for a long time. I think, first of all, I started as a fan, like a super fan, and then I was working at Food and Wine magazine and styling shoots. I actually did a huge shoot here at Parker Palm Springs, I remember, and was so blown away by mud because, and this was 15 years ago maybe, there was nothing else like it. And that is still the case. Like, these pieces are so beautiful and so functional and so timeless. And any food or anything you put in them looks so beautiful. And I'm just so in awe of what you do and continue to be so in awe. And the pieces just last forever. They really are. They are amazing in that way.
It's interesting because when I first started working with clay, I worked with earthenware, which is where most people who, if there's any potters in the room, they know that earthenware is the easiest clay to learn with, and you can make it do anything, and it behaves itself all the time, and it's a good learning point, but it doesn't have the durability. And so very early in my career, I realised there was a point where it was going to a restaurant, and I knew that it wasn't going to last in that restaurant, and I was selling it to the person, and I knew that I was being dishonest in that way of saying, but I said out loud, this won't last very long, and he was fine with that. He was trying for another hat, Neil Perry. Oh. And then I remember having a conversation with my partner James and just talking about it, and he said, change the whole range, and I said, I can't. I have to hang on to some of the earthenware. Anyway, we don't do earthenware anymore, and yes, it does last. It really has, its durability is in its firing temperature. It's the heat takes away the air, makes it shrink as much as it can, and it vitrifies it, and that gives it the strength. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, let us back it up to the origin of
Yes.
mud, because I think everyone would love to hear about that, because it is, the Limoges porcelain piece of it is so interesting. You still produce all Limoges Limoges porcelain. Can you back it up to the beginning?
Okay, so the beginning was I started at 30. I moved to Sydney from Melbourne, which is a big trip. I mean, I may as well have been moving to London. It's a long way to move away from all your friends and family. And I moved into a share house with a woman who was in love with pottery and was doing pottery classes on the weekends. And she was an actor, and she would always, very generous, have a go, please go and have a go with this. And I would ignore that because there was nothing that, I didn't think it was a thing that I wanted to do. I was very much into music and acting and other things, but that as a creative outlet, I'd never really thought of myself as creative in that way. And one sunny, beautiful day like today, nobody was in the house, and I wandered out into the back shed and I picked up clay and I started making things. And she came home after that weekend and said, how did you do that? And I realised that, time had passed. I'd spent all this time and I just worked out how to do things. Then people showed me different things, and I gave really awful things to people that I'd made. And they were very generous, and they gave me, when you make a meal and people go, oh, wow, that was wonderful. It sort of inspires you to do another meal, or make a cake and make another cake. It's the same with ceramics. And I would give these things, and they'd be so lovely to me. And I remember giving James's brother this awful vase. I really wish I'd taken a photo of it. I don't know where it ended up. And he was so kind in his response to me giving him this gift, even though it was terrible. So you should always pat people on the back, because you never know where that patting somebody on the back and helping them find their passion. Because if people hadn't have been kind to me, I probably would have just gone on to the next thing,
But then you had such a connection with sort of the chefs in Sydney and
stylists. So in the early
things.
days, we'd sort of, that was the very early days of picking up clay for the first time. But then once I started going to the markets and selling wares there and speaking to a few store owners, having the courage to walk in and say, what are you looking for? Because I didn't go, I tried doing here's what I make, and there was a lot of rejection. I wasn't very good with that. So then I changed my tone, and I said, what are you looking for? And they would tell me what they were looking for. And so this was my interpretation of what they wanted. And, you know, I had a studio in Surrey Hills in Sydney, and that was very close to where all of the publications were. So Donna Hay would come around and bring me lunch and give me an idea, you know, tell me about risotto and
Can
how
you
a
tell
risotto
everyone who
bowl is
Donna
different.
Hay is, in case people don't know
Yeah.
who Donna Hay is?
So Donna, she sort of started this movement of using fresh produce and simple cooking to speak to people. I mean, Jamie Oliver learnt about, I think, what he did by seeing what Donna was doing, and she was absolutely an institution in Australia, still incredibly popular with people, and created a look and feel. She was working at Marie Claire magazine, and her last issue of Marie Claire, she did this article on us called Pot Stars, and it was so much fun. My daughter Violet, who works for the company and is at the back there, she was 3, I think. And so she was in that photo shoot being 3 and having ringlets, and it was just the most joyous kind of publication and fun thing to do. And really all of that process, so different people like Bill Granger, who is another great Australian cook, who did a lot of cookbooks. There was a big sort of wave of Australian chefs who were going out to the world because they could. There was a publication, and they were using mud products, so we would get knocks on the door and people would call us and say, can you supply us with these things? The people from Lane Crawford walked into my tiny little studio in Surrey Hills one day in Armani suits, wanting to place an order, and I was just looking at them thinking, I've only got one kiln. I don't know how to do this. But I was ambitious, and I wanted this to be a family business. I wanted it to be my business, the thing that paid me money. So I worked really hard to realise sort of all those requests from all of those different people, and created this environment. And as you grow, you can tweak it and make it better. And that's been the fun part. Sort of the last 10 years, I think we've really been able to say, what's best practice for our business? How do we make it the nicest environment for our teams to work in? How do we think about the environment, sustainability? What can we do with all of our waste product? I mean, there are different challenges. The range doesn't change that much these days, but we're working always on doing things better, and it's really something that I'm very proud of. Yeah. And
just in the US, you know, you started with one store, right?
Yeah, we've got 3 stores now. So we always, flying from Australia, have to stop somewhere, and Los Angeles is always the stopping point. Well, I thought, I don't really understand Los Angeles, but I will find somewhere. I need to find somewhere where people walk around the shops like we do in Australia. Like you go shopping, that's sort of an activity in Australia, and I'm not big on shopping malls. I like to be blue sky shopping. So we were looking for something that sort of, we liked Jones on Third and we liked Toast, and there were, you know, quite a few stores around that area that made sense to us. But I think it's been a bit of a rocky road trying to navigate the world and what's been going on there. And probably it's a bigger store shopfront than we truly need. I don't think we have a store that big in any of our other locations. We definitely need the back of house, make sure we've got plenty of stock here. But we might look at, when that lease comes, we might change to somewhere. I love Larchmont Village. I think that's a really lovely shopping area. And we'll keep an eye on that, see if there's something that might come up there. We're not embedded anywhere forever. I think we really have to respond to what the needs of the consumer are and make sure that we're listening to that all the time.
I hope the people who have mud know this, but the pieces can be used in the oven. They can be used straight to the table.
Yeah. Dishwasher.
Was that an intentional choice?
I mean, the whole range really was created from my home, my table, what I needed. And as my life changed and evolved and, you know, our table got slightly bigger, I could make bigger pieces. But, you know, initially I had no children, and then I had one child, and we had a very small dining table, which we still have that table. And so the pieces all had to sit on the table, which was this platter, the small squares, the little pieces that all sort of made a geometric shape in the centre of the table, but allowed dinner plates to sit around a small table, was where we started. And then, how far can I stretch this porcelain? How wide can I get a piece? How big can a piece be? That was sort of the next challenges. And, we made the pebble extra larges and the cheeses and the bigger pieces, which are really fun, but not so easy to store. You need special storage if you've got those pieces, but yeah.
I'm in New York, I can't have those pieces. You guys can have those pieces. Pebble, this pebble is my absolute favorite because you can do pasta, you can do, as Violet was saying yesterday, you can do a roast chicken, you can put it straight in the oven.
Yeah.
It's the best, most multifunctional piece.
And it wasn't a mistake.
Oh.
It was not designed as a bowl.
Oh.
So this piece was designed as a lamp base.
Oh.
So it was
It's my
that way, and it went all the way around. And then there was a pole out of it, and then a very straight lampshade. And it broke in half that way. And I thought, oh, that's kind of nice. And I glazed it, put it in, took it home, and went, oh, wow. And I think James might have said to me, do you need another bowl?
I get that also. Do you really?
Do you really need another bowl? I went, yeah, I think I do. And then we did it in all sizes. So we did from the extra small to the extra large, in size. And they are...
The best sushi, soy sauce, and salt cellar, anything.
Yeah.
It's...
Jewelry,
pickles,
earrings.
Jewelry. I use mine for jewelry, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to put a little splash of colour into a space that maybe is quite quiet.
The perfect
normally.
salad bowl. The perfect.
It just
For
you
my
just
family
don't
vibe,
throw it. It doesn't go all over the table
Yeah.
when you're tossing the
Yeah.
leaves. I love it. Yeah.
That's perfect. So, can you talk a little bit, because you touched on that, the process of creating the forms?
Yeah. So in the beginning, the very early days, I would throw a piece, and then from that thrown piece, I would make a mould. I didn't study at university. I had everything that I did, I learnt from another potter or from making mistakes myself. So I was very bad at mould making, was never a skill set of mine, and I definitely outsourced that as quickly as I could find somebody to do it for me. I knew that was not going to be my thing.
What are the molds made out of?
They're made out of plaster. So that we do a single piece mould, which is unusual. Usually you have a front and a back to a mould if you're casting. So we sort of do a hybrid slip cast. To get colour through the pieces, so let me go back a step. The porcelain is Limoges porcelain. We tint the porcelain to get the colour. It's not a glaze that's applied on top. The colour runs all the way through the piece, which is part of why we have this weird price point variation.
Yeah.
It's all about how much pigment goes into a colour and what the level of difficulty is then with that piece. Because the clay behaves one way when it's just plain milk, nothing added. You add yellow to it, it turns into custard. It behaves completely differently. So not only are you dealing with different colours and the variations between pouring with those colours, you're also dealing with everything else that happens with porcelain, which is difficult. So if you have consistently dry heat, fantastic. But we don't. We live in Sydney. We have, 100% humidity for certain days of the year, freezing cold for other days of the year. So every single thing impacts the piece that you're making, including the mood on the person who's making it on the day. If they are in a bad mood and they're not being light with their hands, you get more warping because porcelain remembers being touched, not aggressively but in a harsh way. You can put it back into shape, but when you fire it, it goes back to what it's experienced. It's trauma. We have I actually have a nice story. We have little wrinkles that sort of start on the top of the pieces, and some people really hate them. And my son talked to me about it the other day because he makes at the studio, and he said, "Mum, they're lifelines." And it's when you pour the clay into the mould, and everybody uses buckets to do that. So they're holding like a 10 litres of quite heavy slip in their hands, and they have to very gently have it hit the middle of the mould, and then very gently continue the conversation, so the pouring out of the clay until the mould is full. If somebody tells a joke on the other side of the factory and you hear it and you laugh and you go, ha, 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 you get, he calls them laugh lines. It's about like losing your train of concentration. We don't ever call them a second unless they're an extreme laugh line. But you'll see those pieces in the middle. And I like to keep things there that talk about the human interaction with pieces. If you don't like them, that's fine. You just have to wade through until you get the set that you really want, and take your time. If you like to have completely flat, they'll be there. Yeah. They're not always ripply, but you need to deal with the stock that's in store.
I love that.
Yeah, it is fun. And it's lovely to have like a truly family business. I mean, the whole family work in the company. Violet works in our marketing and brand part of the business. James is an executive director and is busily writing emails in the back of the room. Can't even hear me. Hi, honey. And Spencer's back in the studio looking after the dog and this week and helping everybody make things, which is great.
So you're also in the UK?
Also in the UK. So we have 2 stores, one in Marylebone Lane, which is a beautiful little lane. If you ever travel across, definitely pop in and see us. We're on a corner, and it's like a little jewel box, tiny store, but it's just has the most beautiful window. And on those grey London days, it's nice to see something sparkling in the corner. It's really lovely walking down that laneway. I love arriving in London and going for a walk down Marylebone Lane, because I feel like I know some of the people and they say hello, and
It's like truly a little village.
it's such a village.
Yeah.
You know, I walk in to buy a coffee and they go, no, you have that, and you know, you just feel like you've landed somewhere that you know. And that's the lovely thing about having retail around the world. There's people I love to see in different places, and I have this amazing opportunity to be able to travel and see those people and form those relationships and for things to grow. Yeah.
What informed the color palette? Because it is so special. It's such beautiful saturated color, but then you obviously have these neutrals, but it's grown a lot. I mean, first of all, you don't add color that often. So then I want to touch on the limited edition collection that you've designed for here. But what informs the palette?
It's definitely the colours that speak to me and I think sit back with the palette. So, you know, we live a bit like you guys. We've got tons of sky and, you know, beautiful eucalypt and rainforest and ocean. Australia is a special place. If you haven't been, you should go. It's a lovely place to visit, but it has, like a lot of countries around the world, beautiful light. And I think that it's about, again, always comes back to my home and the things that I love. There are some colours that are true to ceramics manufacturing. So, you know, I quite like that mud will fit back in with, you know, a fine tea set from England, you know, Shelley bone china or something, because the colours that you can achieve there is a limit to the colours you can achieve, and you can do shades within. But this is 30 years, you know, this is the colour palette of 30 years of. There's some things have come and gone. We were talking about chocolate, and we were talking about a few other colours that just disappeared. I lost the recipe, and what we do isn't normal. So most people would just put a little smear of pigment on the outside. We saturate the clay body with pigment. So when they're making their pigments or their pigment recipes, they're not testing them in our process. So occasionally we lost a beautiful colour called Safari, a very deep green, which was a gorgeous colour, and we've never been able to replicate it. So Bottle came and took its place, and we moved on. And people now have these sort of limited pieces that they hang on to.
I remember that green. So what happened? It
just went. Couldn't. It put the same pigment in the same clay, fired it exactly the same way, and it was chocolate. So it's a funny thing. If somebody does something at the other end of where we're buying it, it's the elements just don't align. So, yeah, that's okay.
It's great. Well,
It's frustrating sometimes.
Yes,
And, you know,
but-
occasionally I think somebody here has the sand and you get slight variations on the colour with the sand, sometimes slightly yellower. Pistachio will do the same things. We don't know whether 100% whether it's somebody mismixing the recipe test, or if it's the firing temperature the first time it goes through. We've tried refiring. It's science. If I didn't study, and I'm certainly no expert at being of the world of ceramics, I know how to do one thing well, and we really try to do it as well as we can. Yeah. But once you've got 19 colours and 100 profiles, at least 100 profiles, there's probably more, you've got to be really mindful that people collect this stuff. And they want to always be able to put another plate in and let it sit happily within that, the set that they have. So we've discontinued 2 colours intentionally, which was pink, the bright pink that we did, very lolly coloured pink, and white, because we figured that the white was something you could get in another style, whereas milk was something that was unique to our brand. We still do runs of those 2 colours twice a year, so people who need to replace pieces within that, because we've made the decision to step away from the colour, we'll still be able to provide those pieces. But then we start looking in different directions and going, what else can we do? We want to do something that's new and fresh and catches people's attention. And we're always working with our recycled clay. So we basically, through our process, we'll drop things on the floor, or we'll mislabel something and we don't know exactly what that colour should be. All the colours look the same, pretty much, until they're fired. So clay is clay is clay. You put the pigment in, and most of the time you're putting an amount in that you can't tell the difference in the making process. So you've really got to be quite careful when you're going through our production process to not lose the name of the colour. And so sometimes we have to put things into a big vat, the unknown, and then we recycle that. And we recently did Rescue Rose, which was 100% recycled product. And then we create a limited edition of that, because once we've done that mix, we'll never repeat it again. It's all the bits and pieces that come in. And then we do Rescue...
What did that look like?
The Rescue Rose was a really lovely... Has anybody got any? Yes. It's a really lovely, dusty, deep tone, rosy pink. And we did that. I think we did it as a Mother's Day in Australia, but just did it around the world. Yeah. And we did it in limited shapes. But now it gets quite complicated, because when we launch something, we have to launch it everywhere. So the logistics of how do we get something on a boat, because we don't want to put it on a plane if we can avoid it, and to the other side of the world, give them enough to launch. Knowing what that enough is always tricky as well. There we are. Can you see that?
Gorgeous.
That's the Rescue Rose. But that would normally be end up being landfill. You know, it's that if you don't know what it is in ceramics, you really should put it in the bin, move on. But we're trying not to put things in the bin. And the other thing that we do now is we've been making trivets, which are like a terrazzo of broken mud pieces. So they're the 2 ends where we can't work out what that colour is, and then if it broke in the kiln, we've got to throw that in the bin. We don't throw it in the bin anymore. We keep it and create this really lovely terrazzo trivets for the table.
Pretending to sign the petition for PHYLUM to carry these terrazzo pieces.
It might take a very, very long, slow boat. It's the idea of it. It comes. The concrete that we use for it comes from an end of concrete run. So the truck's done its job, but it still has a bit of concrete left. It goes to a wonderful company called 5 Mile Radius, and they make the trivets out of our waste product the other waste product. And then we To put it on an airplane would be a bad idea, but maybe a slow boat might make its way.
Maybe in 2026.
Yeah,
We start now.
yeah,
They're so beautiful.
yeah. They
They're
are
amazing.
The issue that you're talking about, is it pressure? Is it,
Sorry,
what is the airplane concern that you've mentioned?
just the planet, just having enough, using a lot of energy just to fly things around the world. I mean, we like to fly. I don't want to get myself on a boat, but I think when we're looking at the cost to bring things to market, it's a lot more expensive, and particularly through COVID, all of those prices doubled and never came back down. They are crazy, and what were air freight prices are now sea freight prices. So we just got to be mindful of how we do that. And so we, at any one time, we'll have $500,000 worth of product on boats just floating around the ocean, coming to somebody. The logistics of that is looked after by Claudia in the factory, and that's a big job to try and work out what are we making and where does it need to go. The more stores we have, the harder that gets. It's quite a puzzle.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the limited edition collection that you
Yeah.
just created?
So we've got good friends who we met through our New York store, John and Bill, and they have two beautiful houses here in Palm Springs, and they've always been great ambassadors, mud ambassadors, and gifted lots of mud to lots of people and let people know that we're around. When we had our 25th birthday, they let us have access to their beautiful house in Los Angeles, and we had a cocktails and dinner for press and stuff up there on that beautiful Garcia house in Mulholland, And anyway, John came up with this great idea. He said, why don't you come to Palm Springs? Why don't you make me a dinner set? Something that's unique for my new house that I'm doing. And then come to Palm Springs. You can have both the houses, do photo shoots, do a takeover of one of the stores in town. Have a couple of events during Modernism Week, and we just went, that just sounds like so much fun, let's do it. It is quite a lot of work to get this to all happen, and all the pieces of the first iteration of the new set, which we call Sand Dune, is I glazed myself because we had limited time, and I figured if it was going to be wrong, it's fine if I make the mistake, but if somebody else, it's a bit harder. So we have taken our milk pieces and we've put a glaze finish on them, which is very different. So we've taken a more traditional path. And if I think of mid-century ceramics, I think of celadon glazes. So there's a celadon glaze in the smaller bowl. And then I also think of that satin matte, beautiful low sheen glazes. So very much the pieces match the house and the feeling of Palm Springs. It's a very quiet, lots of greys and warm tone sort of off-whites in that house. And a beautiful floor that has been made out of handmade bricks.
Fire clay.
Fire clay.
Yeah.
So the colours that I had, so from a distance, I think we did quite well to kind of make it a set that worked without seeing the space, but that's what that set is. And we're going to do it just for 3 months. So once a month we'll take an order from this store and from our stores, and then we'll produce them in batches and then deliver them to customers. So it's going to be limited in the time that we make it, and then probably like with milk and white and pink, we'll do replacements once or twice a year. People need them. But it's a fun way for us to do something completely different and to have that new conversation with people about something interesting.
Amazing.
Which I think Australians love all things American. It's always great for sales over here for us to be doing something that's interesting to our Australian customers as well. And similarly, Palm Springs has got such an incredible reputation globally. To be part of Modernism Week has been a really fun thing for us. And the team get to travel, do some stuff, see some things.
Going back quickly to kind of your relationship with editors and magazines and stylists and things, because that was very much my world where I got my start in my career. But you would also create some colors because a stylist would come and say, okay, we have a shoot, or we need to do a cookbook, or we want to style a table in a certain way, and they were looking for something that didn't exist.
Yes.
And that's very special, because that was also sort of the origin of some of these shapes and colors.
Absolutely. And I think it's just about being able to listen. So, I think retail was the same for me. When we opened our first retail store, it was fantastic for me to get that feedback. This is what I need. I've been looking for this. So the teapots didn't exist before retail, and that was really important to get people coming in time and time again to say teapot, teapot, teapot. People really want a butter dish. They've been asking for it for a long time, and I think there's so many beautiful butter dishes, and I have beautiful butter dishes in my life. I kind of don't feel like the world needs another butter dish, but maybe that does need to be done. They're definitely tapping on the shoulder. I think having people who are experts around food and colour is really has been such an important part of the evolution of mud. I remember I was trying to do a new colour. Emma Knowles from Gourmet Traveller came in, and she said, oh my God, prawns would just look fantastic on that. And I just went, oh, okay. So I was not sure myself, but she defined, like I'd created the colours, and she defined which colour was going to come next, and that was steel. And for that catalogue shoot, we put prawns in that bowl, and it looked fantastic. It's just being open to those conversations and listening. That pale blue became Donna Hayes' signature blue, and she had it through all her cookbooks, as Bill Granger used that in his backdrop, matched his eyes. Was a beautiful colour for him to use as well. Different people connect with different colours, and that's, I think, the beauty of mud. When you're choosing your dinner set, it's your unique dinner set. You put together the colours that speak to you. You know how you like to serve food. Often people use plates as dinner plates. Other people might use a pie dish, or they might take one of our platters and do it that way. And the other thing that's sort of been interesting for me with the evolution of mud is going to different countries. We have a wonderful friend in Japan, Wolfgang, and he always says that mud crosses cultural food barriers, because you can do everything. If you bring the shapes together, you can serve Japanese sushi on there, so you can have Middle Eastern food on this. It's not determined by 2 bowls and 2 plates, and you don't buy in a box set of 20. You can have one of those and one of those and one of those. You can change your colours. There are no rules. And it's meant to be fun, and meant to be played with, and meant to evolve in your house as well as, in our studio. So you can change out one bowl and completely change the look of your dinner service. And,
I mean, even how this table is styled. You see all the shapes and how they mix together in such a cool way.
And it will look completely different if I throw a different colour into the middle of it. I mean, these guys don't do a lot of milk, do you? But we sell more milk than anything else.
We do with colour.
But you do colour so beautifully.
Yeah.
It really is gorgeous to be in here. It's inspiring and fun.
Are there questions for Shelley? Yes.
Can you speak about how to care for?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is vitrified. The glaze on the inside is probably it's the softest part of your product is the glaze. So if you have things that stack inside each other, so that the rims around the top and they're dark colours, I would absolutely recommend we use felt in our studio, and we sell the felt to our suppliers. So having felt, I have it in my drawers for all of my pieces, and because you open a drawer and it can be messy in there, and just shut the door again, it's easy to keep them looking pristine for a very long period of time. If you don't use the felt over time, that you will get slight scratches, because all glazes scratch. And even if you look at any porcelain in the world, most companies will only deal with very pale colours. So because we stretch the boundaries and go into dinner plates with colour, and some deeper colours, you might get scratching. So definitely use the felts if you can. Dishwasher, I think, is the best friend of mud. Don't feel like you shouldn't put it in the dishwasher. It will take all of any marks on the outside of the piece, because it can get really hot. Your sink can't get that hot. It will take all the marks and any grease that tends to sit on the outside of the piece, not on the inside of the piece, straight away. I love Magic Sponge or Magic Eraser. It's the best friend of bakeware, of mud. And if you cook things in the oven, you might getting it a bit crunchy on the outside. Get the Magic Sponge out and give it a good scrub. You can really torture the outside of mud. We sand it with sandpaper on the outside, on the very base, which makes it smoother. And over time it gets smoother. The more it goes in the dishwasher, the more it gets used, the smoother the piece becomes. A little bit like a pebble in a river, or it's just being worn that a little bit on the outside. So be as aggressive as you like with the unglazed part of the piece. You can really give it a good scrub. And if all else fails, liquid bleach will take anything off the outside. Tip it upside down, put it on the sink. I have done this a couple of times, not with my stuff, because I tend to put it in the dishwasher, which gets rid of everything. But if somebody bakes and bakes and bakes, and then they say, oh, we had a woman return something to us once, and so I got liquid bleach and poured it over half of the piece. And then gave it back to her, and I said, this is what you need to do. You've got to keep it clean. If it builds up, that's fine. Some people, our graphic designer, I go to his dinner at his house quite often, and he likes it to be that. It's a patina. He's quite happy with that, whereas I like the colour to shine through. So, yeah.
What about utensils?
No problem with utensils. The utensils shouldn't leave no marking on that glaze. That glaze is bulletproof to metals. When I first started and I was doing earthenware and I had a satin glaze that I used to put on, I would get a lot of grey marks on them. You can take those off if you have other pieces at home. This will not happen with mud, but they will come off with a bit of Jif, liquid cream cleanser, and a bit of a scrub. It won't hurt the glaze finish, but it will take those grey marks away. But that's usually on a satin matte glaze. It is tough. You should bake in mud. If you haven't done it yet, you should absolutely do it. It's really fun to take something like this and do little soufflés.
Yeah.
And then they just pop out. They pop out in individual soufflés. That's a hot. The one thing you need to think about though is thermal shock. So going from the fridge to a really hot oven, going from a really hot oven into cold water in the sink. I mean, I think we've broken in 30 years probably a couple of pieces. Once was thermal shock. But really, I don't have that experience personally, but maybe I just am aware that I don't go from extremes of temperature. Yeah. But it's pretty simple, really. Love the pieces and have fun with them.
And it can handle cold too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Put it in the freezer. You can freeze stuff in it. I just wish that I could create lids so people could store things in it, but it's tough. I'm not very good at making things seal. Upside down plate does work.
Yeah.
Yes, it does work.
Can you put it on a flame or in a barbecue?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, you can't. And
Don't do
pizza
that.
ovens, probably not a great idea because that is quite extreme heat. Pizza oven, that stone is heating up to and then you're putting something very
What
hot.
about the broil?
The which?
Broil.
Broil. Grill.
Like in the oven and then turn on the
Yeah,
broil.
I don't think that would hurt it because that's a downward heat, that's hitting the food. I think that should be fine. Yeah.
Microwave?
Microwave, yes. Fine.
I would ask if somebody doesn't own any mud and wants to start building their collection, what would be a piece you would recommend to kickstart?
Well, I know what I would say.
Well, the Pebble Large. I mean,
Pebble Large is
Pebble
the
Large. If somebody's coming in to buy a gift and they've heard to come into mud to buy a gift for a wedding, I just say Pebble Large because nobody is ever unhappy with a Pebble Large. You can have 6 of them in your cupboard and find uses for them all the time.
Yeah.
But then for me, I love funny, I don't like handles on things. And for years I did no handles because if you've made ceramics, they are a pain in the ass to keep on. And they crack, and we, you know, the level of, like, the pain we go through to get these coming out with their handles intact is an extreme thing. We've worked it out. I think at year 29, we probably worked that out. So I love having that shaped mug in my hand with tea in it most of the day, walking around, leaving half cold cups of tea everywhere. People don't ask me if I want a cup of tea, I just have a cup of tea. If they're making one, they should give me one too. And so that, I love that shape. It's great to, as my everyday wandering around, it seems to be, it follows me everywhere.
Did you have a follow-up?
With one more, with 30 years doing mud, has there been a kind of pinnacle point where you've thought, like, a standout moment where you've thought how much it reaches people, like both emotionally and how often they use it in their home, and where you thought, oh, I am on the right track, or?
I think I think that there have been, I mean, the things that jump into my head when you say that, one was being in New York and my first trip to New York, and I think I went to a meeting with the people from Ralph Lauren, strangely. Was it Ralph Lauren? No, it was the Donna Karan people, and they were so excited. They didn't end up placing an order, but I walked out of that meeting thinking,
Did
wow.
they end up producing something that looked very similar?
Quite possibly, but I was busy. I didn't notice. But it was such an exciting meeting to have, and kind of feeling like I'm in New York City and anything is possible. And then I went down to have a meeting with the people at Saks Fifth Avenue, because somebody had a friend who knew the buyer who set me up. And I walked in and they said, "You've got 5 minutes." And I looked at him and I thought, I can't even unpack this box in 5 minutes. And I picked up my box and I walked out. And I stood on the street and I felt really sad after having that first great meeting and then having this bad meeting. And then I looked up and I saw Bergdorf Goodman's sign, and it was the days of payphones. I walked over, I picked up the phone, I rang, got put through to the buyer. They went to my website and they said, "We love this." And then they placed their first order. And that was definitely a moment where I thought anything is possible.
Did
and
you
that
throw
first
your
trip
hat in
was,
the air?
I felt like Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
I felt like Mary Tyler Moore. I kind of did want to do that.
Or a bowl?
Or a bowl. Yeah, but it was that moment of like, there is so much potential for what I could do with this business if we can work out how to do business. And the rest has been that, just working out how to do business in a way that we're comfortable as a company doing business, and, you know, working with people that we like, you know, and making nice things for lovely people. That's really that simple. And always remembering, we're not curing cancer. We're doing something lovely, but it's not, you know, it's not the most important thing that's happening in the world right now.
Well, it is, in a way. You know, you're bringing people together around their tables. And
That is lovely to do.
Really lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
A quick question about being a founder and female, and in the market, how do you navigate the other brands that may be a male-dominated industry? So I'm just curious how you weathered that.
So I think 30 years is a long time, and even 20 years ago, I mean, I think the things that were important in my day and where I get stuck were things like getting a telecommunications bill from my provider that was crazy. And I'd spend all day on the phone talking to a man who was basically telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about. That has sort of been something that I've weathered for years, being told that I don't know. And you do. You're around it, you observe it, got a brain in your head, you work out that some of these things are not fair, and there's ways of navigating. But I don't tend not to get upset anymore by those sorts of things. I had lots of sleepless nights in the first 10 years of business, and I learned how to go to sleep, and I learned how to, I don't really turn off from work because it was my passion project, and it's always been that. So I let it probably infiltrate too much into my life. I don't step away from mud enough. But I do know how to not worry about the worrying parts of the business all the time. I think it's tricky being a person in business. Generally, I mean, if you're a business owner, you know that the ups and downs of being in business. You get this wonderful team who you love, and they're like family to you. And then somebody doesn't like you anymore, and they're walking out the door, and that hurts a bit, you know. Or you worry about paying the bills or paying their wages or whatever happens. COVID came, and that was quite a shocking time for any business owner who's looking at these wide-eyed team, and we've got, I think, 100 and something people around the world that needed looking after during that time, and how do we best look after them? What can we do to get through this? And, you know, we navigated that, I think, really well, and we all got through the other side, which was great. But there was a moment in there where I just thought, I don't know what's going to happen, but everybody's going to hell. Mm-hmm. It's not me on my own. It's not something that I personally did, but, you know, if this all blows up. So, yeah, I think being in business is not for everyone. But when I didn't have my own business, I was a terrible employee. Because I wanted people, I would work really hard for somebody, and I wanted them to read my mind. I would never tell them what I needed or what I wanted in that workplace. And so as a boss, I know those signs, so I tend to be, I remember driving to work one day, and somebody was talking on the radio about effective business management or something. And they said, do the hardest thing in your day first. And I've really stuck to that. Like, I don't ever sit with a problem for a long period of time. If there's an issue with a staff member, they know that I'll talk about it. I'm going to talk about it straight away. I'm not going to carry that round. So my team know me and know that that's how I communicate as well. And I think that's been really great.
Amazing. Yes.
Do you still create pieces yourself as well? Like, are you throwing?
I don't throw very much. There's not a big need for me to throw in the business. I started working with this wonderful ceramic artist called Charon, and I was pregnant with Spencer, so I would be 25 years ago now, and he had just arrived in Australia. He's a Thai gentleman, and he had just arrived in Australia, started working with me, working on design and mould making, and he did not want things thrown. So 5 years into mud, it was no longer necessary for me to throw. There were so many other things for me to do. Throwing was not important anymore. So he liked me to draw, and very simple drawings. He works amazingly with a piece of plastic and some string to create the most incredible working moulds that we have. We've just recently gone into working with silicon master moulds, which is a whole new, brave new world for us. But Somchai has just, for 25 years in the business, provided the spine of every single piece that we make, and done it so beautifully. So I learnt to draw. That's what I learnt to do. And I bought a wheel a couple of years ago. I had an accident and snapped the ligament in my thumb. So I've always been quite nervous about whether I can throw or not. So I bought a wheel, and it sits in the corner and looks at me. And I don't use it. But my daughter said to me the other day that she was somewhere, and somebody said, your mother is a potter and she never taught you how to throw? Oh, what a bad mum. Anyway.
You touched on it yesterday, but you went to Japan and studied some technique.
Yeah, so on a recent trip to Japan, we went down to Naoshima, to the Art Island area, and then up to Osaka, and booked in for a kintsugi classes, and learnt how to mend pieces, which was such a lovely thing to do. Another sort of part of, it's just got a little tiny crack in it. What could I do? Like, it's not functional. Like, it doesn't limit the function of the piece. It could live happily in somebody's house if I could just learn how to fix it. So it isn't that hard, and I actually like doing really detailed, annoying activities like that. So I just sat down and recently took a hold of our pop lamps, which are these little guys there. And because they're one piece of porcelain that is shrinking and pulling in different directions, they tend to get little cracks just underneath the hood part of them. And yeah, so I've been playing around fixing those, and then you paint something on there, and then you get the gold powder or silver dust and put that on. And that's a really fun thing to do. Just more hours in the day would be good. That's, yeah. But the kintsugi is lovely.
Is that a technique anyone can learn, or?
Yeah, anyone can learn how to do it. People have class, people teach it everywhere.
Yeah, I have some pieces.
And it's a
not
great
mud
thing to do in
pieces
Japan.
That need that.
I love to do classes when I travel. Like
Yeah.
we did Ibori, the dyeing, Japanese dyeing class. That was amazing. And we do cooking classes when we go to Italy, and it's nice just to sort of go to a market and have somebody showing you where things are and be part of the daily lives of locals. Yeah. What would you learn in Palm Springs? Is there a
How to be fabulous.
how to be fabulous?
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank you all. Thank you all so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks, guys.